Concentrate. Tribute to Gabi Ero, Zichrono Livracha. I also want to take a moment to honor Gabi, our former vice president of blessed memory. Gabi was a true Zionist. He cared deeply for the people of Israel, supported the IDF with all his heart, and played a major role in strengthening communities in Gush Etzion. At Ariel University, where he worked about a year and a half, a little bit more, he helped shape who we are. He opened doors, built partnership, expanded our impact, and helped place Ariel University on the map in Israel and around the world. Gabi led with warm vision, integrity, and a deep love for Israel. His belief in our mission continues to guide us. May we continue his work, building the land, supporting our people, advancing research, and making Ariel University a source of pride and strength for the state of Israel. And I just want to close. Ariel University stands at the intersection of excellence, heritage, and national purpose. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for standing with us for Israel future, its people, and its enduring story. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Ehud Grossman, and I want to thank our university. Gabi Harrow was a very close friend of mine, and so many out there. He brought me in as Director of Strategic Partnerships at our university with the blessing of Professor Grossman, and I've got to meet and work with Professor Grossman and Gabi Harrow firsthand over the past many months. Losing such a friend as Gabi has really impacted so many of us. Gabi, as the Vice President of our university, dreamt up this lecture series and brought in as a partner myself, AFJS, and so many others to educate so many out there. And we want to take a moment just to remember Gabi Harrow, his family, and to thank him and his family for all they have done and do for our university, for Judea and Samaria, and for all of the Jewish people. We want to now move on to AFJS, a partner in today's lecture series. American Friendship Judea Samaria started with Captain Yigal Domoni and Rafi Lazarowitz, partnering together to really make a change, to bring education to the forefront, meaning changing the narrative from the negative to the positive, bringing the truth and facts about Judea and Samaria. Unfortunately, so many out there have only been hearing about Judea and Samaria and Israel as a whole from various TikToks, social media, and false narrative propaganda accounts. With the help of AFJS, we are bringing the truth, facts to the forefront. I spent the last week with Yigal Domoni traveling around Israel, Judea and Samaria, on very meaningful missions. Without further ado, I want to introduce Yigal Domoni, co-founder, co-president of American Friends of Judea and Samaria. Yigal, welcome.
Hi, good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Gabriel. Gabriel is one of our board member of AFJS. Thank you so much. As Gabriel said, we just end 4 days a week of delegation in Israel. AFJS is educational organization that work in United States and also in Israel. We have partnership with a lot of ministry and a lot of groups in Israel, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the WZO, and other organizations, and also the Jewish municipalities in Judea and Samaria. And we are making we educate people about the truth of Judea and Samaria. But not only that, we have boots in the ground also. We help the farm at Judea and Samaria. The farm, the agriculture farm, are the real pioneer, the real strategic project that's running now in Judea and Samaria, and AFJS as helping that groups, that people that living on the hilltops along with their family and keeping and guarding the Jewish land and the Jewish historical land for the future with their agriculture, with sheep, with tractors, and we help them with that sources. We raise money and we also give them tractor. At the last 2 years, we already give 6 tractor to 6 farm in Judea and Samaria. And also, in meanwhile, I'm serving in the Miluim as a major in the paratroopers, and I done kind of 400 days, more than 400 days in Miluim, in different places in Lebanon, in Gaza, and so also in Syria. But also we are working a lot in United States. I just came before 3 weeks from Oklahoma, and we educate lawmakers in United States about Judea and Samaria, about the real historical biblical land that we are living here and keep it and guarding that land. And I'm very happy that in Oklahoma they just start to work for a bill that will recognize Judea and Samaria as part of Israel, as done in Arkansas, and we work about Texas and West Virginia and New Hampshire, Florida, and other states that will recognize Judea and Samaria as part of the land of Israel. And I want to end with the memory of my friend Gabi Harrow. I start to the plan how to start that. We have a series of webinar. I met with Gabi and we think what we can do more to tell people the truth about Judea and Samaria, and we decide to start and run that program and that project. And unfortunately, we lose Gabi at the last month, and I want to put it in his memory of my good friend Gabi Harrow that I know a lot of years. And I want to say also thank you to Maya that work with Gabi and now working at Ariel University, and she take the place to for all the work to run that series. Thank you, Maya, and the stage is you, Gabriel.
Thank you, Yigal, a close confidant, friend, and a true hero of the Jewish people, Yigal Delmoni. To learn more about AFJS, American Friends of Judea Samaria, please become a member. Help AFJS continue their mission by joining them at afjs.org. With that, also remember, our university is the only university in Judea and Samaria educating the future of the Jewish people. We have an amazing medical school. There's even a wine institute that I will be talking about in the future, and so many more amazing programs and divisions that are part of our university. So help us help the future of Israel. Become a partner with us. You can find out more by contacting me, by contacting Professor Grossman, by contacting Maya, or just leaving us a message or emailing us, and we will contact you back to become a partner with us in educating the future of the Jewish people and the state of Israel. Now we're next up on our lineup with some beautiful words for everybody here is Minister of Foreign Affairs Gideon Sa'ar. I've met Gideon Sa'ar many times with AFJS in Israel and in the New York region on various missions talking about Judea and Samaria. I have to give a word that I met him last with Consul General Ofer Akunis in his office in Manhattan, and we really spent some time speaking about the importance of Judea and Samaria. And I really learned and became very close friends with him because seeing how he is so into Judea and Samaria really made us very, very close friends. And I saw how much he cares about the future of Israel and Judea and Samaria. Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar has been a leading voice in Israeli public life for decades. He previously served as Minister of Education and Minister of the Interior, shaping national policy and advancing Israel's interests at home and abroad. His insight into Israel's strategic and political challenges brings rare depth of the conversation on Judea and Samaria. Just last week, Sa'ar spoke at the U.S. Security Council. This is what he had to say.
Shiloh, Hebron, and Beit El. This is the map of the Balfour Declaration of the British Mandate. Here is Judea and Samaria. Some of you call it the West Bank. In 1921, then Secretary of State for the Colonies, Winston Churchill, said on a visit to the land of Israel, "It is manifestly right that the Jews should have a national home. And where else could that be but in this land with which for more than 3,000 years they have been intimately and profoundly associated?" This jug handle is from the kingdom of Judea, 2,700 years ago. It has a stamp of the Jewish king on it. This coin, this little coin, from nearly 2,000 years ago, says "Freedom for Zion." Found in the Judean desert, it was minted during the second year of the Great Jewish Revolt against the Romans. How can Jewish presence in our ancient homeland violate international law? It's a contradiction in terms.
Unfortunately, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar was unable to join us today with a lot of political happenings going on, which I'm sure you know. With that, he sent us this personal message to share with you all today. Here is his message.
Virtual Academy. I also want to commend my friend. I want to congratulate you for participating in the Judea and Samaria Virtual Academy. I also want to commend my friend, Yigal Dilmoni, for fighting for the simple truth. Judea and Samaria are the biblical cradle of our civilization, and we are here to stay forever. In today's world, you cannot win the diplomatic battle without public diplomacy. The PR battle on social media and in the international media is a matter of national security for us. Decision makers in democratic countries are guided by public opinion. On this eighth front, Israel's enemies are many. When they failed on the battlefield, they turned to the war of information. Just as Israel needs fighter jets on the battlefield, it needs to invest in its public diplomacy. We must counter the lies with the truth and the facts. Under my direction, the Foreign Ministry has evolved to be a ministry of public diplomacy with equal weight to traditional diplomacy. I want to wish you a fruitful lecture series. We hope to see you join our efforts in fighting for truth and justice among a sea of lies. And I'm sure we will prevail.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar. We really appreciate your words. Ariel University has been doing so much for Israel, as I've said before. I just have to add that our university has pre-med programs in English and a variety of master degrees in English as well. This year, we started a master's degree in communication, advocacy, and combating anti-Semitism. This program specifically is offered online, allowing students from all over the world to join and become better advocates for Israel. Reach out to us at our university to find out more and hopefully join this fantastic master's program. Now we are moving on to our keynote speaker, Ambassador Yoram Ettinger. Ambassador Yoram Ettinger is a leading expert on U.S.-Israel relations, Middle East affairs, and Jewish-Arab demography. Yoram has spent over 40 years advising legislators, diplomats, journalists, and community leaders. Ambassador Ettinger served as Israel's Consul General in Texas, Ambassador for Congressional Affairs, and Director of the Government Press Office. He co-founded the America-Israel Demographic Research Group, documenting key trends in Judea and Samaria. His insight shapes policy debates and helps audiences understand the strategic importance of Israel and its heartland. Please remember to send your questions via the chat below, and Ambassador Ettinger will address them directly during the Q&A part of this session following his presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce everybody to Ambassador Yoram Ettinger. Welcome.
Yoram, please open your video.
Says that the host has to do it for me. It's disabled by the host. Okay, here it is. Okay, thank you very much. I would like to start with a general statement. Contrary to conventional wisdom, the U.S. does not extend foreign aid to Israel. The U.S. makes an annual investment in Israel, which, as I will demonstrate in a few minutes, yields to the American taxpayer the highest ever return on investment. Most of us are familiar with the fact that about 250 giants of the American high-tech industry have established research and development centers in Israel. And they have done it in order to leverage the brain power in Israel. They have invested many billions of dollars in Israel, which have yielded a very high return on investment, catapulting their annual income and enhancing their global leadership. In a similar manner, the US government recognized Israel, particularly the Israel Defense Forces, as by far the largest research and development center, battle-tested laboratory for the US defense and aerospace industry, as well as the US Armed Forces. As a result, every year, the US has made an annual investment in Israel, otherwise misperceived to be foreign aid. And the fact is that that annual investment in Israel has yielded the highest ever return on investment on any American investment and has bolstered the global leadership by the American defense and aerospace industry and the armed forces. For instance, in 2018, Israel received the F-35, Lockheed Martin combat aircraft F-35. It was the first country receiving that combat aircraft for operational use. At that time, the top American experts, some Israeli experts, declared that program, the F-35, to be doomed to failure. They pointed at too many mechanical and technological problems. However, within a year, by 2019, together with Lockheed Martin, the manufacturer, Israel, the Israeli Air Force, was able to overcome most, if not all, of the mechanical and technological glitches. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. Since 2019, according to Lockheed Martin, the curve of export is skyrocketing. Last year alone, 2025, $40 billion export of the F-35. I don't claim that all of it is because of Israel, but certainly from 2018, when Israel received that combat aircraft, the first one to receive it operationally, Israel has been the only country using it systematically and in an unprecedented intensity, far beyond the intensity used by the US Air Force or any other Air Force for obvious reasons. The challenges facing Israel. For example, back in June of 13, Israel launched an air offensive against Iran. In that air offensive, which disabled completely the Iranian air defenses and Iranian Air Force, it was the participation of 200 American-made combat aircraft, F-16, F-15, F-35. In June of 2025, Israel acted as the most important, I can say the only, showroom of the American aerospace industry. The world was watching, and the world contemplates which combat aircraft should they get. They hear from China and from Russia and France and England that their combat aircraft is superior to America's F-35 or 16 or F-15. But all the Chinese and the Russian and the British and the French and the Italians and other countries manufacturing aircraft carrier, all they can do is show very colorful, impressive brochures and share with potential buyers also very, very impressive results of simulation games. On the other hand, the people, the marketing people of Lockheed Martin, F-35 and F-16, and Boeing F-15 don't need colorful brochures or simulation games. They demonstrate the outcome of the Israeli Air Force use of their combat aircraft. And the performance is next to perfect. As a result of June 2025, and before that, October 2024, a previous Air Force offensive on Iran, the export of F-35, F-16, F-15 was bolstered in a very, very dramatic manner. And I would say conservatively, while not claiming that all $40 billion export of F-35 was due to Israel, but conservatively, 50% share of Israel is a very, very low estimate. $20 billion derived from an investment of $3.8 billion, that by itself is a historical return on investment unprecedented. One might add that in fact, the records of Lockheed Martin show that in the pipeline of the F-35, there are orders amounting to $173 billion. Obviously, mostly from the American Air Force, but the American Air Force also is studying the performance by the battle-tested laboratory, otherwise known as the Israeli Air Force. And based on the performance, they decide to buy more and more F-35, which many among them in the US Air Force deemed it to be doomed to failure, which due to the Israeli Air Force. it became a major success. Obviously, when you create a major economic activity, again, according to Lockheed Martin, the F-35 related economic activity, exports, and domestic acquisition amounting to $73 billion in 2025, that generates income tax. Corporate income tax by Lockheed Martin and the many subcontractors, as well as personal income tax. Due to the success of the F-35 performance by the Israeli Air Force, we are talking about sharp increase of employment from 2019 until today, 35% expansion of the employment related to F-35. To put it in numbers, 290,000 people involved in the production of the F-35 alone. And I don't mention yet the F-16 and the F-15. All of those 290,000 people, they pay personal income tax. So when it comes to generating to the US Treasury income tax, corporate income tax, individual income tax, when you combine it together, it comes to about $3 billion in 2025 income tax revenues to the US Treasury. Much of it derivative of the battle-tested laboratory, otherwise known as Israel. F-16 and F-15 are 55-year-old. Ordinarily, they would be put gradually away from operation. But as the saying goes, the older the violin, the sweeter the music. Due to Israeli upgrades, we are talking about resurgence of exports of F-16 Lockheed Martin, F-15 Boeing, especially during the last 2 years. What happened in the last 2 years? The various wars launched against Israel from 7 different fronts, and the very intensive use of the F-35, but also the relatively ancient F-16, F-15. All those 3 combat aircraft have benefited from literally daily upgrades initiated by the Israeli Air Force due to the intense use. I met one of the managers of Lockheed Martin in Fort Worth, Texas, where they manufacture the F-35 and the F-16. And according to him, every single day, the Israeli Air Force produces lessons which are channeled to the plant in Fort Worth, Texas. By the way, there is an Israeli team on location 24/7 there, and their role is to receive those lessons and direct it to the relevant division in Lockheed Martin. I asked this manager, one of the managers of Lockheed Martin, what's the outcome of those lessons? And his response was, we are talking about hundreds of upgrades in the F-16 and the F-35, cockpit, firing control, wings, etc., derivative of the Israeli experience, saving Lockheed Martin anywhere between $10 and $20 billion. When I asked him if he would have put a dollar sign next to those upgrades, what would he get? The response was ballpark, mega billion-dollar bonanza to the manufacturer. To put it in contemporary perspective, the total research and development cost for the F-35 alone is $55 billion. And when you talk about saving 10 to 20 years of research and development costs, you get the idea why we're talking about saving to the manufacturers between and in the area ballpark of mega billion dollars. I did not visit the Boeing plant in St. Louis, Missouri, the F-15, but I assume a similar bonanza has also impacted Boeing, complement of the Israeli Air Force. We're talking about that investment in Israel, $3.8 billion, which has generated tailwind, remarkable tailwind to American exports, to American research and development, to American employment, as well as income tax revenues. This is not the only thing that Israel is dealing with. Complement of American alliance with Israel, we have received from the US dozens, if not over 100, different American military systems. Each one we use in that battle-tested laboratory, the largest research and development center for the defense and aerospace industry. And each one we improve on a daily basis through lessons transferred to the manufacturer. Each one we increase their exports. We save billions of dollars in research and development, and we expand employment. The defense and aerospace industry in the US employs 2.5 million people who benefit from the Israeli battle-tested laboratory. Very, very different from the misperception of a needy Israel expecting a handout by the US of foreign aid. It's not foreign aid. It's annual investment in Israel. All those lessons provided by the research and development centers in Israel to the defense and aerospace industry are also shared with the different branches or arms of the American military force. We're talking about the US Air Force, which benefits from joint exercises with the Israeli Air Force. One may ask, and rightly so, why would the US benefit from joint exercises with the Israeli Air Force, which flies American-made combat aircraft? The IQ of the Israeli pilot is not higher than the American pilot. Why would American pilots benefit so much? And as I was told by number of American combat pilots, while the American pilots rarely experience do-or-die state of mind mission, the Israeli Air Force experiences do-or-die state of mind on a daily basis, due again to the challenges facing Israel. Even if it's a training flight takeoff, it's a takeoff within the very narrow waistline of Israel. Narrow waistline, which suggests the minute you take off, you are within range of enemy's radar and enemy's missile, which behooves the Israeli pilots to fly in a more daring manner and in a more innovative manner. And as I was told by American pilots, the first time they realize how really good are the F-35, F-16, F-15 is when they watch the Israeli pilots maneuvering those aircraft during joint exercises, and they do it in a way which American pilots have never done because they don't have to. However, when the American pilots get to their first operational mission, whether in the past in Afghanistan or today over the skies of Iraq or Iran or Syria or Yemen or any other part of the world, they are doing it with the added value of the Israeli experience, which is shared with them on a daily basis. I met a while ago a former commandant of the US Marine Corps, General Chuck Krulek, currently in Birmingham, Alabama, and he mentioned to me that during his years in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, which is the intellectual center of the US Army, he became familiar with the Israeli battle experience at wartime and against terrorism. Because, as he put it, in Fort Leavenworth, Texas, where they formulate battle tactics, it's done largely based on the Israeli experience. And to share another personal experience I had, I was waiting the other day for a meeting with an American senator. I do it 3-4 times a year. I come to Washington for a week of briefings in the House and the Senate. And while waiting for my meeting with the senator, in walked an active duty colonel, commander of a special operation battalion. He was told by the receptionist that there is an Israeli guest in the waiting room. He turned to me and he asked me, "Are you from Israel?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "I have a message of 2 words, thank you." I asked him, what was he thanking me for? And the response was, "I just completed a tour of duty, 1-year tour of duty with my special operations battalion in Iraq. On the way to Iraq, we stopped for 2 weeks in Israel, where we were trained by Israel's top experts in facing car bombs, suicide bombers, and the deadly improvised explosive devices." And he concluded by saying, much of the credit to the fact that we came back without a single fatality is due to those 2 weeks. He added that he spends much of the year traveling around the world training Allies' special operation forces. But, he said, there's only one country where I do not train, but am trained, and that's Israel. And that's Israel's added value to my country. This applies to special operations, it applies to Marine Corps, it applies to urban warfare experts, it applies to various counter-terrorism units, American units, all of them have benefited from the Israeli experience due to the unprecedented cooperation between the armed forces of the US and the armed forces of each battle-tested laboratory, otherwise known as Israel. Such a two-way street between the 2 countries also applies to intelligence. Israel has shared with the US very, very substantial items of intelligence concerning military systems from Russia and China, as well as competing military systems from France and Germany and Italy and Britain and Sweden, etc. All that intelligence has enhanced the level performance by the American armed forces, but also added to the defense industry. For example, when it comes to counterterrorism launched by Israel as well as the US, Israel has been a very unique source. Unique source because we are in the region, unlike the US, some 7,000 miles away from the Middle East, which is the epicenter of anti-American terrorism. Epicenter of terrorism, which activates sleeper cells on US soil, in Europe, in Latin America, in Africa, etc. Israel has been able to collect intelligence which is not available to the Americans, not because we are better, but because of our location and our demography. Many Israelis can blend easily in every single Muslim and Arab country in the area. And as a result, we collect much information which helped the US to preempt offensive of terrorism, which helped the US to prevent deadly activities on US soil. For instance, back in 2018, Mossad was able to penetrate an Islamic terror group inside Syria, which was working on developing the means to insert explosive into laptop by bypassing the security arrangements in all American civilian airport. Obviously, same thing in Europe. Israel shared that information with the US as well as with Europe, which has bolstered the security arrangements in civilian airport, averting a catastrophe. One can imagine what would the impact be of American Airlines, United, Southwest, Frontier Airlines blown up in the air, or similar catastrophe on the ground in American airports. What would it have afflicted, or how it would have afflicted American morale and American global posture? It was all averted because of Israel's intelligence. Can one monetize that? Well, one can turn to what was stated by a former head of US Air Force intelligence, General George Gideon. According to General George Gideon, if the US were to procure on its own the intelligence it receives from Israel, then the US would have to establish 5 CIAs. Let's assume that he exaggerated. Let's assume it's not 5, it's not 4, it's not even 2. It's only 1. The annual budget of one CIA is $15 billion. That by itself means 400% return on the annual investment of $3.8 billion, in addition to the mega billion saving in the research and development, in addition to the many, many mega billions of additional exports, in addition to the expansion of employment, in addition of the billions generated in the form of corporate and individual income tax. But that's not the end of it. The mere location of Israel has a major, major monetized impact on America's well-being, rendering Israel to be the #1 dollar multiplier and defense multiplier for the US. Years ago, in the 1980s, General Alexander Haig, who was Supreme Commander of NATO and later on Secretary of State, referred to Israel as the largest American aircraft carrier, which does not require a single American on board, cannot be sunk, and is deployed in a most critical area between the Mediterranean, Red Sea, Indian Ocean, Persian Gulf, between Europe and Asia and Africa. And Alexander Haig said if there would not be Israel, then the US would have to manufacture number of new aircraft carriers, accompany them with ground divisions, 6, 7 ground divisions, and deploy all of that to the Middle East area. Again, to put it in dollar terms, in 2026, the cost of manufacturing of one aircraft carrier, the one top aircraft carrier, we're talking between 10 and 13 billion dollars, only one aircraft carrier. That means roughly 340% rate of return on investment. And if you're talking about a few aircraft carriers, which obviously, if you want to do whatever Israel has been doing for the US, you need more than one, more than 5 aircraft carriers. You're talking about well beyond 1,000% return on investment. What has Israel done for the US besides everything which I shared with you in the last few minutes? In 2025, the Israeli offensive on Iran, which disabled the air defenses and the Iranian Air Force, made it possible for the American Air Force, the B-2, to arrive to Iran, bomb 3 major nuclear centers, and fly back unimpeded by Iranian air defenses and Air Force. No US ally could have provided the US with such a service. If you take us a year and a half back, we decimated much of Hezbollah in Lebanon. That ended up with the toppling of the Assad regime, which opened the door for the US to enter as an influential strategic element into Syria. Once again, complement of Israeli military performance. And if you go back further, you find out that in 1981, Israel destroyed the Iraqi nuclear reactor, by the way, for which we were condemned and punished by the US suspension of supply of American combat aircraft, suspension of defense cooperation agreements. It took the US 10 years, 1991, after the first Gulf War, when there was a major event of the defense establishment in Washington. I was at that time at the Israeli embassy in charge of our congressional relations. I attended that event. The keynote speaker was then Defense Secretary Dick Cheney. His first sentence was, "Thank you, Israel, for bombing the Iraqi nuclear reactor in 1981, which spared the US potential nuclear confrontation in 1991. How many trillions of dollars were spared by that Israeli action? How many thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands lives were saved because of that Israeli operation? And one could go on and on. One example before I finish, 1973, the Yom Kippur War, which started with the potential of decimating the Jewish state, but we noticed resurgence of the Jewish military, and at the end of the war, we were close to the gates of Damascus, close to the gates of Cairo. We were stopped by the Americans. However, that Israeli performance, or I should say, that performance of the American military systems used by the Israeli Defense Forces convinced Egypt that being associated with Soviet Union was not as good as association with the US. And the fact is, the outcome of the Yom Kippur War convinced then President Sadat of Egypt to switch from the Soviet satellite to the American satellite. Once again, a major bonus to the US complement of Israel. To conclude, I would say, contrary to conventional wisdom, contrary to misperception, not only aren't we talking about foreign aid, but investment, which produces the highest ever return on investment for the US, but we're not talking about US-Israel relations as a one-way street. US gives and Israel receives. We're talking about two-way street where both benefit from those relations. Obviously, Israel is by far the junior partner. US is by far the senior partner, but it's a partnership which has yielded the US benefits which no other ally could have provided the US. And I assume it's time for the participants to express their own position, to disagree with anything which I said, or just to ask questions.
Thank you, Ambassador Ettinger. We will see if we have any questions in just a minute. If anyone does have any questions, please, everybody just ask in the section below for questions. While I am on here, before we wrap up and talk about the next webinar lecture series coming up, myself, who really enjoys food, as many as know me, and wine, I must stress that at Ariel University, the Wine Research Center is a unique department unlike any other in the world. They have discovered over 100 ancient wines and vines exclusive to the land of Israel, combining chemistry, genetics, archaeology, and agrotech. They are researching better winemaking methods, drought-resistant qualities of some of the ancient vines, provide lab services to all wineries in Israel in an effort to support Israel's wine industry. Come visit us at Ariel University and taste the ancient wines, and we'll be talking about other events coming up with the wines themselves. Let me just see if we do have any questions over here for Ambassador Ettinger. And Ambassador Ettinger, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule and educating us today. It was a fascinating talk. I learned a lot about we'll talk about Israeli planes, and I have to ask, what do you think if Israel did not bomb in the early 80s, if Israel did not bomb the Iraqi nuclear reactors, where would we be today?
Well, maybe we wouldn't be. And I think the lesson of bombing the Iraqi nuclear reactor, similar, by the way, in 2007, we destroyed the Syrian nuclear reactor, is for Israel never, but never, to subordinate its critical national security interest to diplomacy or to our relations, even with our number one by far ally, United States. When you examine the track record of Israel from 1948 until today, we have had many instances of frictions between American presidents and Israeli prime ministers. And on many occasions, Israeli prime ministers defied American presidents. And after a very short period of acrimony and tension and denunciation by the US finally realized that the Israeli action not only was critical for Israeli interest, it was also critical for American interest. For Israel to succumb to then American pressure to refrain from bombing the Iraqi nuclear reactor would would afflict the US with dramatic setback. And the US has been thankful since the first Gulf War for Israel to defy the US. Israel does not have the luxury not to defy American pressure.
When you talk about American pressure, when you talk about, if you look at the political scene in America now, and it's very, very interesting to see the right, the left, but a lot of people, especially on the right, who talk about America first, and who are talking about and re-looking at the relationship between America and Israel. Thank God President Trump in his first term has put together the Abraham Accords. How do you think the Abraham Accords benefit America? I'm not talking about how they benefit Israel, how they benefit America, our true partner in, democracy and diplomacy around the world, even with Yehuda v'Shomron. And I'm not talking about ever having an Arab, what they call Palestinian state within any area of Israel. But how do you see the Abraham Accords helping America?
Well, first of all, when it comes to Israel role in the Abraham Accords, that role has benefited the USA, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco, South Sudan, and even Saudi Arabia, with no peace treaty, but with very, very wholesome defense and technological and irrigation and agricultural cooperation with Israel. Most of it has been a derivative of Israeli posture of deterrence. The stronger is Israel, the more stable the area, the more stable our Arab allies of the USA, and therefore the more benefits to the USA. When one talks about America first, I don't view it as a threat to Israel. I think it's natural for Americans to stick to America first. I stick to Israel first. But I know that Israel first requires a very strong and deterring USA, because without a strong deterring USA, the world would be much, much less stable, and terrorism would be much, much more disastrous, destructive. Same applies to Israel. America first has always benefited from Israel. Give one example, the War of 1967. 1967, many of us look at it surgically, as if it's something domestic to Israel, among Jews in the world. Are you for annexation? Are you for a two-state solution? There is much, much larger context. On the eve of the 6 Days War, Egypt, together with the Soviet Union, were about to topple every single pro-American Arab regime, crowning Egypt, then President Nasser, as the pan-Arab leader. Israel trouncing, demolishing, obliterating the Egyptian military infrastructure, liberated pro-American Arab regimes, especially Saudi Arabia, from the jaws of Egypt and the Soviet Union. The Israeli victory saved or spared the US a catastrophic economic setback. 1967, US was dependent largely on Persian Gulf oil. But the Israeli victory ensured that Persian Gulf oil was under pro-American Arab countries. Israeli victory in 1967 denied the Soviet a major bonanza, which could have changed the global balance of power. And going back to June of last year, the Israeli disabling of air defenses, meaning disabling Chinese and Russian air defenses, was not limited only to the Iranian context. Those Chinese and Russian air defenses are deployed throughout the globe. Israel disabling them and sharing the information of how to disable them has enabled the US to boost its own global posture of deterrence and dealt a major blow to China and Russia posture of deterrence. And again, no other ally of the US could have rendered the US such a service.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, for joining us today. And once again, all of your amazing insights. I want to thank our partners in this project, AFJS, American Friends of Judea, Samaria, educating and changing the narrative, sharing truth and facts, educating us all here today. Please become a partner. Share our mission with your family, friends, neighbors, all over social media. Join us at afjs.org. I want to thank Professor Ehud Grossman and the entire staff and board of Ariel University in believing in me and believing in this project. And please become partners with us. Help Ariel University continue educating the future of the Israelis and the state of Israel. We are doing so much at changing the future in education and bringing so many great projects and departments to all at Ariel University. I want to thank Yigal Damoni. I want to thank Maya at Ariel University for partnering with us and really making this happen today. I want to invite everybody to our next webinar, March 8th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in America, 6 p.m. Israel time, featuring Israel's Minister of Diaspora Affairs and the fight against anti-Semitism, Minister Amichai Shikli, and Brigadier General Amir Avivi, a retired IDF Brigadier General and leading Zionist security strategist. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Wishing everybody a shalom, stay safe, and Am Yisrael Chai.